Hey folks, Steve here, talking Jocelyn Moorehouse's The Dressmaker. Ladies and gentlemen, revenge is back in fashion, as the tagline for this film would indicate. All-star cast: Kate Winslet, British Kate Winslet playing an Aussie, the great Judy Davis. Woody Allen was once asked who is the greatest actor you've ever worked with, female or male. He said Judy Davis. Ooh La La, Liam Hemsworth is in this, and Hugo Weaving, direct from... I suppose Hugo Weaving's pretty well known for an international audience because of The Matrix. He's also appeared in a number of other films. Very good actor, Hugo Weaving. This isn't Kate Winslet's first Australian film. She was also in a very early Peter Jackson feature, Heavenly Creatures, where she was fantastic, playing an evil child. And she was in Jane Campion's Holy Smoke, where, again, she's in Australia, playing an Australian film. So she seems to enjoy venturing this way. I once walked up the stairs with Kate Winslet, the 2001 Edinburgh Film Festival. There you go. I have nothing more to say. She didn't speak to me. She was wearing a denim jacket, and I thought, good on you, Kate Winslet, for being at the premiere of your film and just wearing a denim jacket, not feeling like you have to dress it up. That was for a film called Iris, World War II film. Not a very good film, but Kate Winslet, as always, was fantastic. Now, this is the thing about this film. It's an odd film. It is a hybrid of sorts. It is a comedy, but it's a madcapped comedy. It seemed to work well in Australia, as we will talk to, but it has a Western element, like a Western genre element. And if you listen to the soundtrack and not say the film, you would be led to believe that The Dressmaker is actually a spaghetti Western movie, but it's not. But there is a Western element to what's going on here on the screen. So how do you actually market a comedy drama Western? That will be of discussion today. So these are the two Australian posters that you can see. I quite like the one that was used as theatrical release of Kate Winslet holding her sewing machine and looking very regal in her attire. I really don't like the one on the right here, where it doesn't really indicate at all what sort of film it is. Anyway, that's Kate Winslet with Liam Hemsworth. Very attractive on-screen couple, I would think. Need I say more to that? Now, I just want to whip through a couple of the posters from around the world, which is always an interest of mine. The Italian poster, you've got Kate Winslet looking very kind of femme fatale, where she has a burning village behind her. The German poster, firing also with the Zippo in her hand, similar dress. What sort of film are we about to watch? What sort of film would both or each poster actually indicate? A comedy Western drama? Maybe not. Would you see the film based on these two posters if you're in Italy or Germany? And remember, both of those countries would have had this film redubbed, so you wouldn't hear the Australian accent in either film. You would just hear Italian actors in Italy basically redubbing the film. What do you think about that? Does the film lose its national identity when you can't hear the national accent? How important is accent to the films? And I wanted to show you the USA poster because the Kate Winslet from this poster does not look like Kate Winslet at all. So it's very similar to the Italian poster. Is that even Kate Winslet in that poster? I question that. Um, Again, she sold on the Zippo. Again, the town's on fire. The tagline: "They had it coming." So, a town deserving of being burnt down, apparently. And this is the UK poster. And who wouldn't want to rush off to the cinema, to the big screen, to see Kate Winslet and Liam Hemsworth embrace, what looks like is going to be a passionate kiss. It's a bit of a teaser, this poster, isn't it? If you want to see Kate Winslet and Liam Hemsworth kiss, then you have to come to the cinema to see the next part of that shot played out. And the tagline for that film: "Secrets, gossip and scandal are back in fashion." Get it? Because she's a dressmaker. Anyway, the film in most of these regions didn't do that well. It did okay in the UK, which would have been based on Kate Winslet, but it didn't do nearly as well as they expected it to do, especially after its huge Australian release. Okay, now, the film is directed by Jocelyn Moorehouse. Jocelyn Moorehouse is a writer, producer, director. She's married to PJ Hogan, the director, and that is worth mentioning because she works quite closely on PJ Hogan's films, many of his films. As you can see, she was a producer on Muriel's Wedding. She was a suspected co-director. There are a lot of people who will say, who worked on that film, closely on that film, would say that Jocelyn was very involved in the making or the directing of that film, but not credited. She wrote and directed 1991 Proof, also with Hugo Weaving, who is back in The Dressmaker. Then she went to America, had to make American Quilts. Now, there was a big gap with her directing gigs. 1997, she makes 1,000 Acres, and then she doesn't direct another film until 2015 with The Dressmaker. Now, I've put up the title of her memoir that was published in 2019, Unconditional Love, a memoir of filmmaking and motherhood, which is a great read. I highly recommend it to anyone, where she talks about being a mother, having 4 children, 2 of which are autistic, requiring more hands-on time from her. And she's basically made a decision to invest in the needs of her children ahead of her own career as a filmmaker. She was actually going to make a film in between Unconditional Love and The Dressmaker in the earlier 2000s called Eucalyptus with Russell Crowe. But apparently Russell was being a real arse, requiring script changes and a whole range of other things, and he ended up not wanting to do the film in the end, and the whole film fell apart, and it was quite a traumatic experience for her. There was an excellent piece that was written on the attempted adaptation of Eucalyptus that never eventuated, but so is the film industry, I suppose. But I think Jocelyn Moorehouse makes really interesting films. People who work with her just love working with her, it seems. And she's also worked on a number of other films that she hasn't directed. All right, now, The Dressmaker. So this is the top Australian films of all time. Crocodile Dundee, still leading the list. What this list tells you more than anything is Baz Luhrmann, just give Baz Luhrmann whatever he wants, really. So in the top 10, you got The Great Gatsby, Moulin Rouge, Elvis, and Australia. He's got 4 out of the top 10. And then in number 12, he's got Strictly Ballroom. So Baz looking very good on this list. But The Dressmaker, also looking good on the list. That's number 16. And Jocelyn Moorehouse project, Muriel's Wedding, not credited director, but involved nonetheless. and that's there at 21 of the top films of all time. So The Dressmaker, 16th highest grossing Australian film of all time at 20 million. So that's a pretty good return for The Dressmaker. For a zany comedy, the thing about Australian comedies is they always do well in Australia, but not so well outside of Australia. And that would be something else that we could discuss. Why is that? Why is that Australian films are doing well in Australia? Australian comedies are doing well in Australia, but not outside. Is it the Australian? Is it the Australian language? Is it the Australian style of comedy? Yeah, interesting. Anyway, that's that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about adaptations in this discussion, because I think there's a lot to be said about Australian adaptations, and oddly, Australian adaptations are still not taught to the degree, they're not embedded in the curriculum, the teaching curriculum, in the way that they are in other countries. So if you look at America, so American films, about 70 to 90% of American films at the moment are adaptations at some point, right? They are part of a franchise, they are part of a direct adaptation of a book, or they're using a known character or something like that. So Indiana Jones would be part of that whole cycle, right? Where basically they are putting onto screen characters that the audience is already familiar with. Now, I want to look at the year that The Dressmaker was produced, because there was something really interesting happening in that year. And many of those films, because it was a year, 2015 into 16, was a very successful year for Australian films at the box office. And the reason, I would argue, was because the majority were adaptations. So you've got Blinky Bill. I'm not sure if anyone saw Blinky Bill on the big screen. Last Cab to Darwin, which was a stage play. And then you've got The Dressmaker, which is a adaptation of Rosalie Ham's novel. Rosalie was a RMIT student. So for any RMIT creative writers, there is a great future to be had in writing a novel. Now, all of these films returned a higher than expected box office results. So Last Cab makes 7.4 million, Blinky Bill makes 2.9 million, and The Dressmaker took the lion's share at 20.7 million. So why are people more willing to go and see an adaptation? Is this tied to a sense of familiarity, that people, when they watch a film, what they want to see is what they know? It might suggest why people are more willing to engage in, say, season 7 of a series, rather than sit down and watch a new film where they have to basically be introduced to new characters and things like that. Could it also be ticket prices at the cinema, which are very high? Let's not muck around with that. They are very high. And are people wanting some assurance that what they're about to see is something that they will like, a character they will like? All of these questions are interesting, because I think when we're talking about Australian national cinema, Australian cinema, exhibition cinema is also important, and these films and how they play for an audience and how they attract an audience is also important. And why would an original film where the audience don't know anything about these characters really struggle to find an audience, when a film with a ready-made audience, an audience who are familiar with the previous film or those previous characters, or had seen the play, or they read the novel, why are those films doing so much better? All right, now, according to figures collected by the Motion Pictures Distributors Association of Australia, right, Australian box office revenues in 2015, year of The Dressmaker, totaled 88 million So that's 40% up from 2014, which was a measly 26.2 million. All right. As recent Australian figures suggest, even adaptations that underperform still tend to enjoy a stronger opening box office week. So compare this to Holding the Man, which was based on a very popular memoir. Right? Compare that to Cut Snake, which was, can I say, a pretty woeful crime movie. It was not an adaptation. Not even the crime genre could save that film. Very bad film. Very, very bad film. My suggestion in this lecture is don't do yourself a favour. Just keep away from Cut Snake. Okay. Now, when it comes to successful adaptations, it's often down to filmmakers with training to adapt, right? So Tony Ayres, director of the before mentioned film, is a very talented adapter, right? He produced The Slap and Barracuda, both based on Christos Scholkis' books. Very good writer, Christos Scholkis, as is Robert Connolly. And Jocelyn Moorehouse, she's a good adapter as well. She adapted, of course, How to Make an American Quilt. And I would argue that a problem that a lot of Australian directors have is they make their film in Australia, they make their pet project in Australia, then they're given opportunities to go and work in America. America is a adaptation-led industry. Then they go over there, they haven't been trained how to adapt, and they make, stinker films, and then they sort of, the whole career goes into freefall. So I think that's another argument that we really need to embed adaptation into production courses far more than we currently are, right? But still today, adaptation is not the norm of the industry, and as suggested by Screen Australia's recently funded feature project, things do not seem to be drastically changing. Most of the films Screen Australia are still funding are, can you believe, not adaptations. Yeah, odd. Okay, final thought. So, how do we watch a film as an adaptation? So, when you're watching The Dressmaker, ask yourself, how do I know this is an adaptation? How does the film play? Does it play in a particular way that tells you it's an adaptation? Does it use things like intertitles? Adaptations are often set in the past. This film is very much set in the past. Does it refer to real life events and things like that? There is something of the film itself that announces itself as an adaptation, which I think is worth discussing and thinking about. Now, the film's nostalgic. Now, I've used AI technology to come up with the images for this, and it seems that nostalgic is that a syringe that is on the screen next to nostalgic? I have no idea. And why would a needle be nostalgic? Anyway, is the film nostalgic? How is it nostalgic? Do you want to be part of this world? And I think with the very attractive on-screen coupling of Kate Winslet and Liam Hemsworth, I think there is a sense of nostalgia in this film. It is a nostalgic Australia. How is this nostalgia represented in the small town community? Why was The Dressmaker so successful in Australia, folks? What is it about this film, and why is it so successful? There is something about the event film that Tom O'Regan actually talks about in his book. And Tom O'Regan was, a very good Australian film commentator. He wrote a number of really seminal books on Australia, and he talks about Australians will go to an Australian film if it's an event. If you have to go and see this film, so everybody will go along. But he says once an Australian film loses its eventness, people just stop going, right? And what The Dressmaker did really successfully was it created a sense of enthusiasm and event. So everyone's talking about this film, so you have to go and you have to see this film so you can be part of that conversation, right? And I think that there was something about that film, and the film was really sold out as, a fun night out, with your friends. Think about who the film was made for when you're watching this film as well. Was it made for you? Was it made for someone else? When did you first hear about The Dressmaker? Or are you hearing firstly about The Dressmaker right now? How is the country and land depicted in this film? Environment and place and spaces is crucial to this film. And I think that's something that Jocelyn Moorehouse really does concentrate on. And she does a really good job concentrating on that. Like if you think about other films, How to Make an American Quilt, Proof, also Mira's Wedding, they are very much about the place that they are set. And there is something really interesting going on with that. And finally, think about Australian accents. How and why are they used? What do they depict? Right? I will say that Kate Winslet is a very good person to take on an accent. She seems to do it very successfully, whether she's playing a Brit, which is her natural accent, an American, or an Aussie. She's very good with the accent. I will say that about Kate Winslet. All right, so that's it from me. That is The Dressmaker. So have a think about the film as adaptation, how we're watching this film as adaptation. Also, as a history film, I mean, it's not true history, but it is a historical setting that we're playing with. What does the film say about Australian history, about small town history, and also the pettiness of it? Also, one other thing is, how are Australians as a collective represented in this film? Australians represented in a positive way, or are they represented in a negative way? Would you want to be part of this community? I suppose is the question that I'm really getting at. Okay, so The Dressmaker. It is a wild ride. It is a comedy, drama, western with a very western soundtrack, with an all-star cast of led by Kate Winslet, co-starring Liam Hemsworth. And I will be looking forward to hearing what you have to say about The Dressmaker when you do see it, if you haven't seen it already. That's it from me. Speak to you soon. Bye for now.